Here we are, folks, for another tutorial about something that's very important in InDesign, is placing images, links, and graphics, and understanding the links panel itself. I'm Jason, and I'm going to walk you through how this happens in InDesign. Placing images and graphics and logo in InDesign is a very important thing because this is a layout program. So how do I put my images and graphics in here? Well, everything gets placed by using the File menu and choose Place, which is Command or Control D. You navigate to the place where all of your links are, and InDesign is very, very forgiving about what types of links. PDFs, TIFFs, layered Photoshop files, Illustrator files, PNGs, JPEGs, you name it, you can pretty much select it and import it into InDesign. So here's my list of items. And I can simply click on any one of these, click Open, and I get my loaded cursor. My loaded cursor is waiting for me to place this image or this object or this logo or graphic into InDesign. Now I can simply click and the object is going to come in full size. And sometimes it's going to be huge. So I'm going to undo this. And with this loaded cursor, I'm going to draw the container in which I want this object to appear. And it's placed. This happens to be an Illustrator file. So let me go in and I'll go under File, Place again, and I'm going to put in a Photoshop file. So here is a tube of paint, and this is a Photoshop file. I click and drag, and I draw my container, and it drops this image in. Here's my images, and I'm ready to work with them right here. You'll notice when I take my selection tool and I move over my images, I get this little kind of what's looks like a focus wheel in a camera. And this focus wheel is called the content grabber. And in my opinion, I find this to be completely annoying. And here's the reason why. When you move something on your page, you simply click on it and you move it. And where do you tend to click to move? Whether it's an image or a graphic or a container or text, you tend to click in the middle. And you hover over this and you grab this and you move it, and your container stays in the same place, but your graphic moves. And this is just absolutely annoying. It's like tripping over shoelaces all the time. So this little focus wheel, or this what they call the content grabber, I'm going to turn that off. And I'm going to turn that off under my View menu, under Extras, and hide the content grabber. Once you turn this off, it's off. You can turn it back on if you want to, but then people say, well, how am I going to grab my content? Well, in a much more efficient way. But we're going to get to that. So, with our content in here, we have our container, and then we also have what's inside the container. Just like text, we have our text container. We double click, and then we get our type tool activated to then get into Edit Our Container. Click Escape, and we're back out of that container. Images are the exact same way. If I select a container, I can move that container around. If I'd like to get into what's inside that container, in other words, my image, I can double click, and now I can move my image all around while leaving my container in that same place. Okay? How do I get out of it? Hit Escape, and I'm back out of it. Now the containers here, I'm going to turn on my container edges. I'm just going to hit W so I can see all of my edges. You can see that my containers are simply a container. Just like text containers, these just happen to contain a picture. These containers, with your selection tool, can be made to crop a portion of the image. So if I'd only like to show a certain portion of this image, I don't need to edit this image. I can simply use my container to crop that image. And by cropping that image, this allows me to get the right size or proportion of my container quite nicely. Now, if I double click, you'll see that I get the bounding box of my image, because I've double clicked, gotten into my container, and I can move this all around, leaving the container where it is, and I can also scale and rotate this freely as well, keeping the container where it is. I'm going to undo this and hit Escape. So, select the container, double click gets me in, double click will get me back out. If I double click to get in, I can also use Escape to get me back out. Okay. Now, sizing these images. Well, sizing the image, when I grab the container and I resize the container, All it does is change the size of the container and therefore change how much I mask or don't mask on my image. Now what I want to do is I want to scale both of these together. Well, if I want to scale it proportionately, we know that by holding down the Shift key, that's going to constrain when I change the size of the container. But I don't want to change the size of the container, double-click to get into my image, and then change the size of my image, and then double-click to get to my container and change that. I want to size them both at the same time. Many different ways to do this. One of the ways is by selecting your entire container, going into your control bar, and if you do not have your control bar, you can go under the window menu and call up control. And you can change the percentage here just by clicking up or down on the percentage here. The percentage doesn't change, which is kind of odd, I know, but you can reduce or enlarge this in 1% increments. If you have your properties panel, under the transform section, you can click on the three dots here, and you can also use the percentage here to go larger or smaller, again, sizing both the image and the container together. Now this is, I find, to be a little bit tedious because you normally resize these things on the fly. So yes, that's a way you can do it, but I'd rather just go in and resize it by the keyboard. So, keyboard shortcut, Option Command on the Mac, Alt Control on the PC, and then your period and your comma keys, which also share the greater than and the less than symbol. So, Option Command Mac, Alt Control on the PC, greater than, less than. We'll scale those together, and they'll scale them up and down in 5% increments. Nice. But an even shorter shortcut for this is this. So here, I know that I'd like to scale these, both the container and the object proportionately, so I know I'm going to hold down my Shift key. But if I hold down my Shift key and I scale, I only scale the container. So on the Mac, I'm going to hold down Shift Command, PC, Shift Control, and Shift Command or Shift Control, when I pull, will scale both my container and the contents inside the container. That's simple. Lots of different ways to scale and size them. Shortcuts, even faster shortcuts, but this is the one that I like to use. Shift Command and pull, or Option Command, greater than and less than, to quickly resize as it goes. What happens if your image is cropped? Well, how do you know it's cropped? Well, you really don't, okay? But here's a way that you can find out. If you select your container, double-click, and then click and hold the mouse, you're going to get a ghosted portion of the image. Here, I can clearly see what is cropped out of my container. So, how did I do that? I selected the container with the selection tool, double-clicked, and then click and hold, and it shows me the ghosted area. Very nice. How do I get this opened up so I see the entire image? Well, the same way I would do this in a text container is I would have my text container that is closed up. I would double-click on the bottom center pull handle. Okay. Well, in an image, it's just a container as well. Okay. It just so happens to contain an image, whereas the text container just happens to contain text. But they're both just containers. So if I double-click on the bottom center pull handle, look at that. It opens it all up. However, if I have an image that is cropped both vertically and horizontally, and I double-click on the bottom center pull handle, it will uncrop it vertically. If it's cropped horizontally, I will need to do the horizontal, or the midpoint on the horizontal, to uncrop that. How do I uncrop both at the same time? Well, if it's cropped like so, I don't click on the bottom and then the right center here, I double-click on the lower right-hand pull handle, and it uncrops. If my container is too large and my picture is kind of rattling around inside the container, double-click on the lower right-hand pull handle and it will snap it down to the actual size of the original file. Nice ways to do it. Now, let's take a look at this up close. I have some graphics here and I have some images. And I'm going to zoom in here and we're going to take a quick look at this and we're going to see how these look. So I look at my image here and I look at my graphic and boy, I am not happy with the quality of this. And now I'm starting to suspect that these images or these graphics are not well made, and down the rabbit hole my brain goes. Don't worry about it, folks, because The way images work here in InDesign is you don't actually place the image into InDesign. You are simply placing a preview of the image. The image itself and all of its content and all of its data is back where it's originating on your hard drive or server or wherever you brought it in from. This is just the preview that moves around. It keeps InDesign moving quickly and the display working very well too. So it's not going to burden your InDesign file with a complete file size of multiple megabytes. And one of the way InDesign makes this happen is it gives you a low quality preview or a low resolution preview regardless of the quality of the image. How do we change that? Under the View menu, Display Performance. We have three different types of display performance. Fast display, which just simply shows you the picture box with an X in it. It's a picture. Okay? When do you use this? Well, when I'm working on a catalog and I have lots of images that I already know are placed and I don't want to have my screen scroll slowly as I scroll through the pages, I set it to fast display. Typical is going to give you a low resolution display, regardless of what the actual quality is. This is what we call typical or low resolution, 72 pixel per inch display. Display performance, setting that to high quality, is going to render all of my images very nicely. Do you see how that's all cleaned up now and looks really good? Looks delicious. But at what cost? Well, it just slows down as you're scrolling through pages or moving through things. InDesign has to use more memory in order to display these. So, usually, I set my display performance to typical display. If I'm concerned about the quality of an image and I would like to see, just test this just to make sure that this image is actually good quality, because I may get a file from a client or somebody that I haven't really looked at. I put it into InDesign, I question the quality of it. I'm going to select this particular object, right click or control click on that, go down in my contextual menu here, and I'm going to set the display quality just for this selected object. So if I set this selected object's display performance at high quality display, it renders beautifully. Great, that's fine. I can right click again, go to my display performance, set it back to typical, and I know it's going to be just fine. Here with this paint tube, it looks a little pixelated. Sure, it's low quality display. Display performance, high quality, looks absolutely fantastic. Wonderful. I'm happy. I now know that these are going to work well, but I don't want to take up my memory by keeping these set at high quality display, so I set them all to typical, and now I can move them around, place them, size them, scale them, and I know that my output is going to look just fine based on what I see. Now these images can be used in many different ways, but what we do have to pay attention to is how they actually come in and link to our InDesign file, which is why we need to have the links panel. To call that up, go under Window and call up Links. Every time we place an object into InDesign, it will create a link back to the original file, and in this case, on my hard drive. There's a lot of things that we can pay attention to in the Links panel. If you select a link in the panel and you click on your twirly down here, it will open up and it will tell me everything I need to know about this file. Here's the name of the file. It was created in Photoshop. It's in page 2 of my document, which, by the way, it's also the link right here. So if you click on a file in the links panel and click on the link here, it's going to bring you right to that page and select it and put that front and center in your screen. The color space is RGB. The status is OK, meaning that it knows where it is, and the OK status shows that link. And it simply says, I know where that file is. Now, what does that actually mean? Well, think of it this way, okay? You go to work, you park your car. You come back out, your car isn't there. Well, that link between your car is now broken because you put it in one place and you left it. Well, okay. You couldn't take your car with you, so obviously you have to park it someplace and you have to assume that it's going to be there when it gets back. Same thing with InDesign. And we're going to explain what a missing or modified link is and does and how it shows up. Here it says, yeah, I know where this file is. You imported it from your hard drive. Here it is. And if I ever need this, if you print or export or save as a PDF, all I do is go right back to that source file. I know exactly where it is, so the link is established and it's okay. Here's the size of the file, here's the actual resolution, here's the effective resolution because I've scaled it up or down, who made it, where it was made, what it had for dinner, what it tastes like, everything else. So lots of good information. Okay? This is very important. Now, one thing I want to talk about is copying from, say, Illustrator or from Photoshop or any other software and pasting it into InDesign. That's a really bad idea. And the reason why is because if you copy from some other application and paste it into InDesign, there will be no link, and therefore you can't edit that file if you need to edit it. So we always want to go into the File menu and choose Place, navigate to where that is on our hard drive there, grab what it is that you want to go ahead and import that file, and place it inside your application. Now you'll notice when I just did that, it's like, oh my gosh, where did my popcorn logo go? Well, one thing, folks, I don't know if you noticed this or not, but I'm going to undo this here, and I'm going to get my loaded cursor, and I'm going to bring it back over here. One thing, when you go under the File menu and you choose Place, one of the default items is Replace Selected Item. And this is very common. You accidentally have another container selected. So when you go in and you place a file in there, it bumps out what it is that you have. Okay, so I go in and I want to place this logo here. Whoops, it went ahead and it replaced the logo that was there. Oh my gosh, I wasn't paying attention. I'm just going to do a Command or Control Z for undo. It knows that, okay, you probably didn't want to do that. And then you click and drag with your loaded cursor to place that new logo. What happens if you have a text container selected and you go under File and you choose Place and you go in and you place an image in there? It will knock out your text. Why? Well, InDesign is like, hey, you know what? It's a container. Text goes in a container. We're just going to throw it in here. Image goes in a container. Yeah. A container is a container. InDesign doesn't really care. Luckily, when you do Command Z and undo, you can then go back, undo what it is that you've mistakenly done, draw a new container, and get all your objects in here. So that's quite nice. And again, you see that these don't look very pretty. No. Illustrator files are going to display very rasterized-like, even though when I select them and I right-click on them and I choose Display Performance, the vector will then display very well. PDFs are the same way. This is a PDF. Doesn't look very good. Right-click, set the display quality. That looks awesome. Now I've gone through here and I've placed each image separately. Now I can scale them and move them around. One of the rules is only one image per container. If I've got 6 images, I'm going to need 6 separate containers because only one can live in there at a time. But the client has provided me with a lot of content, and I'd like to go in and I'd like to place all these images at once. So I'm going to go under File, Place, and I'm going to go and I'm going to select multiple files all at once and click OK. I have to wait a few seconds as they load into my cursor, and now my cursor shows me I have this loaded cursor with 7 objects in here. What are those objects? Well, use your up or down or left or right arrow, and you can cycle through everything that you have in your loaded cursor. If you get to something that you don't want, simply hit Escape, and it knocks that picture out of your loaded cursor, and you can cycle through and choose which one you want to place. Now I could go through and I could place these one at a time, or I could use the fantastic Gridify feature, which allows me to click and drag and draw a container, and while my mouse is held down, I use my up arrow to create rows, right arrow to create columns, and I'm going to create as many containers as necessary to satisfy the number of images I have in my loaded cursor, which at this point is 6. I let go, it then goes in, and it imports all of my images, all of my objects, all of my logos, PDFs, everything that I had in my loaded cursor into this document. That's a really nice way. So it's kind of an electronic way of making a contact sheet like we did back in the days of photography. We want to see what's on our negatives, we do a contact sheet, and we're able to see everything in there. Now you'll notice because we brought these all in, I've got 6 images and I have 6 links in my links panel, which is great. If I do go in and I duplicate, I'm just going to hold down my Option or Alt key and duplicate this object. It's the same image here, and you can see that it always keeps track of every occurrence of every image or logo that I import, and it puts it on that page, and it groups them together here very nicely so it doesn't take up a lot of space in the links panel. Now, I can also take any of these objects and copy and paste them to this file or any other page in this file without any problem. But what I don't want to do is I don't want to copy and paste from Illustrator and paste something in here, or copy and paste from Photoshop and paste something in here. That's bad. We're going to get to that, but here's what I want to show you now. I would like to edit some of these images, this logo or this image here, and I want to go through and edit this. Well, thankfully in my links panel here, I can find out exactly where it is, but I don't want to spend the time going to my hard drive, hunting it down, opening it up, and making changes. So I'm going to do this through the links panel, and I can do this several different ways. I can either click on my object on the page or click on the object here in the links panel, go to the drop-down menu and choose Edit Original from here, or I can choose Edit With, and we're going to show you why, because sometimes I have a file that likes to open in either in Preview on a Mac or Windows Media Viewer on the PC, and that's not really something we can edit with. So sometimes I have to tell it, here's what I want to edit with. So I can do that. I can also do it slightly easier by simply right-clicking on the selected link in the links panel and say Edit Original or Edit With. Even faster, what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply click on the object on the page, an Option or Alt double click, and it's going to launch the application that it was created in. There it is. It was created in Illustrator. And I'm going to make some edits to this here in my Illustrator file. I'm going to save this Illustrator file. I'm going to close this Illustrator file, and I'm going to come back into InDesign, and you can see that it has gone in and it has made those changes. And it's simply updated that quickly and brought me right back to my file. That quick. Let's try that again. This time I'm going to go and I'm going to choose Edit Original, and I'm going to make those edits. Again, it opens it up in the file that it was created in. I make those changes, make those edits, maybe go in and reduce or enlarge kind of the popcorn kernels for a little bit more dramatic effect. I have to save the file. I don't have to close it, but I do have to save it. I'm going to close it anyway. The second I click back in there in InDesign, it brings it back in, same size, same location, everything. I don't need to stop and replace that file. That's super nice. If I do this with a Photoshop file as well, again, Option or Alt double click, launches the application that I created it in. I make changes to the file, have to save it, because if I don't save it, then it's not going to come back. Here, come back into InDesign, it's automatically updated. Okay, so Option or Alt double click, save those changes, close it, jump back in, automatically done. Same size, same location, same everything. Sometimes, however, these files do not open in the application that you want it to. This is a PDF, but I know I can edit PDFs in Illustrator. So if I Option or Alt double click here, it's going to open this up in Adobe Acrobat. The problem with this is I really can't edit in Adobe Acrobat. Not what I want. Okay, so I'm going to close this file. And here is where I can go back in and I can right click on my link here and I can say, I want to edit this with, and then choose my applications. This is a very common issue when you have JPEGs, because JPEGs want to open up in just the simplest viewer on your machine. But with a JPEG, obviously, you probably want to open that up in Photoshop. Here, if I want to open up this Illustrator file that was saved as a PDF, I have to go in and say, okay, let's go in and open with Adobe Illustrator. So I'm going to open it up. It's going to launch Illustrator, and it can come in. There's my file. I make my changes, do whatever I need to, save this file, close the file, come back in to InDesign, and the file's automatically updated there. Same size, same place, same location. So, very nice and easy to work with here. Now, here's the one thing that I want to show you. Don't copy and paste from Illustrator or Photoshop or anything else. And here's the reason why. I'm going to grab just this popcorn kernel from here. And I've seen people do this. They're like, oh yeah, I copy and paste all the time. Okay, I've warned you. I'm going to copy from Illustrator. I'm going to come back into InDesign and I'm going to paste. And I pasted it in. People are like, see, it works great. I don't know, folks. Here's the problem. If I send this file to you and you now have to edit this popcorn kernel right here, you don't have that file. How do I know? Well, one, the bounding box is a dotted line now, okay? It really isn't a bounding box. Here, my bounding boxes are clearly a solid box, so I know what's around that. Anything that I select here that I placed in is also in my links panel. This isn't. So I have no link to this. So how do I edit this? Okay, I don't know, because somebody may have done this in Photoshop or Illustrator, and now you're kind of stuck. Also, sometimes if you scale this too, what happens, there may be special effects, or in this case, the strokes don't scale. So it looks like this, and if I copy it here and I scale it up, guess what? I end up with a completely and totally different look here that doesn't match my original file. Don't copy and paste from Photoshop or Illustrator or any other graphic or photo editing application. Save the file and place it, because you may end up with a problem that is not fixable. Don't copy and paste. You can copy and paste text. Text is fine. We do it from the internet. We do it from emails all over the place. Not a problem. It's just text, okay? Graphics, totally different thing. Don't do it, okay? How do I know if it's happened? One, the dotted line around my bounding box. Second, my links panel doesn't show anything when I select this file. Big warning sign, okay? I want links with everything. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something slightly different. I'm going to close out of my InDesign file, and I'm going to go back to my desktop where I have my links stored, and with that links, here's my links panel where I've put all my content in before I've started my InDesign file. Here's a tip for best practices. Don't have all your graphics and all your content scattered all over the place. Make a folder and put everything in this folder so that you always go to one location. This is going to save you a whole lot of hassle and time hunting things down. If I go in and I change any attributes or any links here in this links panel, say I go back in and I decide I'm going to have a little bit more fun with my popcorn and I'm scaling this content here, and I decide to then go and edit this file, and I'm going to save and close this file. Now keep in mind my InDesign file isn't open, okay? I had closed my InDesign file, I go in and I edit my links here, I open up my Illustrator files, I open up my Photoshop files, and I go in and say, okay, you know, I want to do a few things with this. I may want to tweak a few things, adjust a few things, whatever it may be, I do. Okay, so go in, change a few things, and I'm done. I save and close and come back. Now this was all done outside of my InDesign file. Now, if I go under File and I open up my file again, it gives me a warning sign. It says, hey, you know what? There's an issue with the links. And it's like, well, what issues with the links? Well, you know what? Since you last had this InDesign file open, something's been changed. So we need to make sure that we're getting the most recent version. So it says there's no missing links, which means it knows where they are. But it says, you know what? The ones that you have in the file don't match the ones that are on the server because we're keeping tabs on that. I can simply update them here, but I'm going to choose Don't Update Links, so we'll show you what happens. So here it comes in. It's also telling me there's a missing font as well, which I can go ahead and I can fix. But here it's told me, okay, I've got some missing or some modified links. And usually people look and they're like, well, I don't see anything wrong. The links are right there. Remember, folks, this is just the preview, okay? This is not the actual file. So it's telling me, yeah, there's a warning. We see that in two places. Where the link appears in the container itself, it shows me a little warning sign. And it also shows me a warning sign here in the links panel. Anything that's modified needs to be taken care of. Well, if you don't know how to do that, you can always hover over this little warning sign. It says modified. Click to update. Okay? Option click to open the links panel. Or you can go over here in the links here and it says modified, double click to update. So that's all you have to do. Here, it's a lot easier. You just do a single click to update. Here you got a double click to update. I'm just going to single click to update there, and boom, it brings in a new one. Here, same thing, single click, brings in the new one, updates that file right there. Always make sure the most current and the most updated versions are there. It will warn you when you open, it will warn you when you print, it will warn you when you package, and it will warn you when you export to a PDF if you have any missing, modified images, or another classic thing is if your text containers are closed up, it'll say overset text, or like the warning just gave me, there's certain missing fonts. Very important. Now I'm going to save this InDesign file, and I'm going to go back to my links panel here, and I'm actually going to move this to a different location. In fact, I'm going to go and I'm just simply going to move this. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it into a new folder inside here, and I'm going to change the location of that. Okay. Now I go back into my InDesign file, and if I were to open this, I would get a warning saying, hey, not only do you have modified, but you have missing links as well. And it shows up as a stop sign in my links panel, and it shows me as a stop sign here. And some people say, well, the missing link isn't a problem. I can see it right here, and it's going to be just fine. No, it won't. Because if you print or you export here, and you look at this, and the image doesn't look very clean, this is exactly how it's going to print. Because all it has here is the low resolution preview. And people will tell me, yeah, no, but the image is right there. No, look at it this way. If you have a $100 bill, it's much different than a picture of a $100 bill. A picture of a $100 bill is useless. The $100 bill means you actually have the real thing. If your picture, i.e. your $100 bill is missing, there's nothing there. It's just the picture of it. Okay? That's it. You need the backing of that object or that $100 bill to make it worth something. Same way you go ahead and you update a missing link here. Click to relink or double click over here. And when you do this, it's going to ask you, okay, where's the file? Well, you got to go back into wherever you put that file. Hopefully you didn't throw it away. And another classic example that happens is people will put in a flash drive a removable device. They'll go under File, Place, navigate to that flash drive, place the image, remove the flash drive, and then all of a sudden it's missing. And no. Put all your files together into one folder before you even begin to import them into InDesign. Now I have to tell it. It's like, okay, here it is, and here's the name of it right here. It's like, oh, that's right. I had accidentally moved this here, put it on my desktop, or renamed it. Hopefully you didn't throw it away, because if you threw it away, you got to find it, folks, because it needs it. Once it finds it and it clicks OK, yay, it's all good. It relinked it. Happy. No missing or modified. Link comes back there. Really important when you do that. Make sure you got links on everything. Make sure everything is good, no missing or modified. If they are, make sure you update them. It's as simple as clicking on the missing or modified link here, or double clicking on the missing or modified link here in the links panel. Very, very, very important to do. Okay? Nice to know. Now there's one other cool feature here that I can do with images, actually a couple different features that I can do with images in InDesign. Now, because we can't directly edit an Illustrator or a PDF or an image here, we have to go back to the native application. There are certain things that we can do in InDesign that can really change how we work with images. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you the layer options. And we've got interesting things here. If your Photoshop file was built with layers, which it most likely was, and you import a layered Photoshop file, not just a JPEG, or if your Illustrator file was built with layers here, you can select your image, and you can go into the Object menu and choose your Object Layer options. In the Object Layer options, you can actually see and turn on and turn off all of the layers in that particular file. If we click the preview, we can actually see what's going on here. And I can see the changes just by going in and turning on and turning off those layers. Now this is a layered Photoshop file, but I don't want to go into Photoshop. I just want to turn these on or off. Why would I do something like this? Well, this is a perfect reason to use these layers in Photoshop or Illustrator and turn them off. Say you've got several different products and you built everything into one file. You can go in and you can import this image and you can turn certain layers off, and then you can duplicate this image for use in other places, And you can then turn on and turn off other layers here, so you don't have to go and bring in several different images. You can just go in and bring in one image and turn on and turn off those layers to get different versions of that one image. That's cool. If you want to find out if an object has layers or not, simply select, go into your object menu, object layer options. Here, it's only got one layer. You turn it on and turn it off, and everything comes and goes. So here, I don't have many choices. But if I did have layers in there, that is one way that I can work with turning on and turning off to use the same file, but have different representations of that same file. Another unique feature is this. Because we don't have the direct ability to edit here, there is one feature in here that I find to be very interesting. And this is a very specific item here, and it is a Grayscale tiff. This doesn't work with a JPEG, doesn't work with any other file format, doesn't work with a color tiff either. It only works with a Grayscale or a bitmap tiff. That's it. And this is a throwback to days long, long ago in a land far, far away. Okay? I have a Grayscale tiff. Now what's unique about a Grayscale tiff is this. I can go in, and I know that because I have my images in containers, I can always go in and I can always fill my container with a color. Because this is a layered Photoshop file, and it's on a transparent background, I can add any color that I want to in my InDesign container and have my object show up with any colored background completely independent of my image. Same thing is true with a Grayscale tiff. If I decide that I'd like to put a color in the background here, anything that isn't solid black will allow that color of the container to show through. That is super cool. So this is kind of what we call like a fake duotone effect. A duotone is two different colors. Okay? Usually we do that in Photoshop. But here, if I do have a Grayscale tiff, I can apply a color to my container here, and it shows through in those areas that are not solid black. Now, the next cool thing is this. If I double click and select my actual image, I can now go in and I can change the color of my image by going in and choosing any color here in my color panel, okay? Because the image is black, it's Grayscale, right? So now I could come through here and I can actually apply a color to my image. Only with a Grayscale tiff, only in InDesign, only works with Grayscale, only works with a tiff. So there's my container filled with yellow. Double click and get a hold of my image, and I can fill this with any color, orange, yellow, brown, gray, and get a very interesting effect. So something to think about. All my other objects here, this was built in Illustrator, saved as a PDF. So yeah, I could throw a color behind that as well. Okay, just like so. And make that look kind of interesting. I could go to this coffee logo too, throw in a color behind that. And again, that was created in Illustrator, so I have a transparent background. So interesting things that I can do. I'm not directly editing or manipulating the actual image or graphic or logo, but InDesign works very, very well with this content and this placement here to make your life a whole lot easier with images, graphics, and links. If you'd like to get deeper into the links panel has several options. Right now, it only shows the status, whether objects are missing or modified, and what page they are on. If you go to your drop-down menu in your links panel, you can go to your panel options, and you have a huge list of items that you can show. So there's our status, and there's our page number here. But sometimes you want to know the color space of your object. Is it CMYK? Is it RGB? Is it spot colors? Also, the effective resolution, the effective pixels per inch. And if there's any transparencies, or something that's really, really, really important, scale. This is something that can really save you because with images, this could be tricky. Let me show you what I mean. So I click OK, and now I get all these options. Now I can open up my links panel and I can pull my dividers out here so I have more space between all of my content here. Unfortunately, it will take up a lot of space, but I want to show you how this works. So I have my status here. Everything is good, so there's nothing in the status. I have all my links on page 2. I have my images here, and I can click on what color modes they are. If they're a photograph, they'll be RGB, CMYK, or Grayscale. If they are a graphic, like these are done in Illustrator, it doesn't show me the color mode in here because they're all vector. Here is my effective resolution. And again, the effective resolution only refers to rasterized or Photoshop-based images, okay, things that are made of pixels. Things that are made of vector have no resolution because they are infinitely scalable, so you're not going to have any real resolution showing there. Now, I also included the scale of this too, and it shows what each and every one of these is scaled at, which is not a big deal. However, this scale is very important. What happens if somebody has gone in here and they didn't know how to go in and resize their objects? So they went in and they accidentally tweaked the object, made it too tall or too wide without holding down their shift key, and they skewed it and made it disproportionate. Oh, bad idea. How do you know? Well, you can't really tell. But you know, I've dealt with lots of files here where people don't know how to scale images, and they kind of go in and pull the image without, using the shift key, and then you kind of get things are a little bit off. The people are a little bit wider or taller than they should be, or things kind of look a little bit off. Well, you wouldn't know without specifically looking at each and every object. But because I set this up in the links panel, this tells me that this is scaled disproportionately. The height and the width are not matching. How do I fix that? Well, here. Double-click on your actual object and get to your object here, and either go into your control bar or go into your properties panel with your sizing right here. As long as you go in and set this size to be the same on both the width and your height here, so in this case 17%, actually I'm going to set it to be 13% because that's what it was before, make sure those numbers are the same, and then your scale will just simply show you the one singular scale of that object. 13% just means that it's 13% of the original size of the object. So this is scaled down substantially from the original. Anytime you see two different measurements here, that means that somebody has gone in and they've tweaked it so that the width and the height do not match. Go in and set your width and your height percentage to be the same, and then you know your object isn't scaled disproportionately. All good things to know. So that's a quick overview of how to import graphics, how to understand the links panel, make sure nothing's missing or modified, and also use the links panel so you can find out a lot more information. And shortcuts for placing, scaling, sizing all of your content in your images, and the cool little tricks about layer options and Grayscale tiffs.